Hey guys. Okay, this is the first YouTube video that I've ever recorded, and that should probably be obvious. But for this discussion post, I wanted to start off with my Twitter style bio. Joseph Glancy is my name. My friends call me JB, and you guys can feel free to do that as well. The next thing that I have on my bio is Reader for Life. I love books. I've always loved books. I've always had books. In my life, I am the son of two English teachers, so I was read to and encouraged to read from a very young age, as you might imagine. My classroom is full of books. My my house is full of books, sometimes too many. My wife and I really bonded over our love of books, and I am just one of those people who, believes wholeheartedly all of the research that shows us, that there are so many parts of the brain that are affected positively during the developmental stages of humanity by reading and being read to. And so I am a reader for life, and I will be a reader for life, and I will always encourage my students to try to find the same kind of joy that I have in the written word. I am an English teacher. I have been an English teacher. I've taught everything from adult education courses, like GED English, all the way up through English 1, 2, 3, and 4 in high school. I've taught AP English literature. So I consider myself an English teacher. I'm a legacy English teacher, the son of two English teachers, and I take my job very seriously. I'm very committed because I believe that understanding language as more than just a pragmatic method of communication is really important. Proudly serving the students of DHS is the next part of my bio. This is my 5th year at Dorman High School, the largest high school in the state. I was lucky enough to land here in 2020 when we first moved up here from Florida, and I really like this place. I feel like there's a very good community here. I feel like the teachers and the administrators work very hard to make the kids a priority, and I'm glad that I landed here overall. And of course, my job is to serve the students, right? When you are a teacher, you recognize that yours is a life of service, right? The metric that we use to measure how good we are at our jobs shouldn't be test scores or really anything else. It should be the observable success that we can see in our students. Whatever small or large improvements to their lives that might be or entail. So I am in service always to my students, and I am proud of it. The next thing in my bio is developing learners with a thirst for inquiry. That has always been a very, very important part of my teaching style, and my mission as a teacher is to inspire my kids to want to know things. And it not necessarily just things about English, things about the world, things about the way things work. I have, 2 libraries at the back of my classroom, one fiction and one nonfiction, and I've tried to fill my nonfiction library with, books that focus on things that kids might actually want to know that apply to them in their real life. So I have, things like self-help books or how-to books on things on topics that range from like finance to small engine repair and stuff like that, just for kids who might be curious. And reading is a part of my class always. And I just, I would like for my kids to be curious. I think that the way that we keep advancing as a society is that we have wonder and curiosity, and so I try to develop learners with a thirst for inquiry. All right, well, that does it for my bio. Let's get to the central questions for this particular discussion post. Starting off with, why is it important to have a middle school philosophy? So I think it's important to have a middle school philosophy because it provides the school with this sort of clear collaborative guidelines, right, that are in service of, in service to the goal of providing education for students. In the video, there's Mr. John Lounsbury talks about how there's a lot of schools, especially those who are converting from junior high schools to middle schools. They've stalled out during the conversion to the middle school model, stalled out is the term that he used, and what he's really talking about is how they have implemented superficial things like organizational structures, like block scheduling or teaming, but they are not really embracing a philosophy that would allow them to use their structures to the fullest potential. So like a middle school philosophy applied consistently across a teaching staff really solves that issue. And it creates further opportunities for improvements to those structures, right? Block scheduling or teaming, like the implementation of like true interdisciplinary planning and teaching that Lounsbury talks about. John Arnold also talked about in the video how a middle school philosophy keeps the schools focused on the students rather than fixating on, organization or those organizational structures, which improves a whole host of things, right? But most, most notably probably curriculum development. This wasn't really included in the video, but according to the NEA Code of Ethics, right? It's National Education Association. Our first commitment is always to the students, right? So a middle school philosophy helps to keep a school and staff focused on their ethical responsibility, which should always be, at the front of our minds. The second question was, what are the central components of a middle school? There were a few that they talked about there. One I just kind of touched on was a focus on the students, right? Both as a group and as individuals. We go back to John Arnold pointing out that effective middle schools should be asking themselves, who are the students that we're trying to educate and what are their needs, interests, and abilities? So I feel like an effective middle school should really use that focus to drive their instruction and organization, rather than starting with the structures like teaming or block scheduling and then trying to work from there, right? You got to have the philosophy. You have to have the focus on the kids first, and then you build the structures and the curriculum from that. Another central component of middle school is having effectively organized structures. So I don't want to minimize the importance of those structures. The philosophy should guide the creation of those structures. It should guide what those structures do. But you definitely have to have effectively organized structures that encourage, collaboration among both the staff, and the students, and always in service of meeting, student learning needs. They could include interdisciplinary team planning.
Lunch is now being served in the main cafeteria, so make your way down with a large appetite.
Excuse that. That's what I get for recording at school. Anyway. So what I was saying is that another central component of middle school is having effectively organized structures. So those might include, like interdisciplinary team planning that Mr. Lounsbury talked about, or, student advisory programs, right? Guidance programs, or really, any other school program or organization that's designed to create that positive learning environment for the students, right? We really can't minimize that. So if you're going to implement the philosophy, it is important to have those, to develop those structures based on that philosophy and to organize them well. So those I felt were really like the two central components of a middle school, right? You have to have that focus on the students first. That should guide the philosophy, and then once you have your philosophy in place, then you really need to put together all of those effectively organized structures that are necessary for implementation. Last question was, what are some of the struggles that middle schools are having as they implement the middle school philosophy? This I really found interesting. I've been in high school exclusively, almost, for my entire career. And I definitely see how these could be struggles that are faced by middle schools as they are attempting to, to change. But there were a few struggles that they talked about. I wanted to pick out the ones that seemed like the most glaring. We already talked about like the stalling out stuff, where it's like, okay, we implemented the superficial changes. We changed to a block schedule or this, but we're not really doing anything else on a philosophical level. That's there. But another one is that they talked about was this attempt at incremental change, right? Chris Stevenson specifically pointed out, right, that you really have to overhaul the school according to the philosophy that kids are used to, or kids get used to big changes, honestly, surprisingly well. They deal with big changes pretty well, which is interesting. And so, these attempts to sort of like incrementally add one thing or another, like to add teams one year, and then the next year, okay, we'll do teams and we'll have, like a student advisory organization. What Stevenson talks about is how it really just kind of leads to, a lack of a lack of effort, right, or a half-hearted effort on the part of both students and staff. And that kind of segues into another struggle, which I think is one that you really is a struggle at all levels of education: elementary school, middle school, and high school. And it's one that I see a lot, and it's just a lack of commitment on the part of teachers and administrators, right? If you are really going to implement a middle school philosophy, that means that you're going to have to develop staff, you're going to have to work to develop students, you're even going to have to work to develop parent habits and relationships, to truly support adolescent education. And that is work. That's hard work. And some people really just don't want to do it. I hate to say it, but there are teachers who show up to education every day and phone it in. And it makes me sad, but it will always be a significant struggle to the implementation of any school philosophy, but it's especially in this case as it relates to a middle school philosophy. Anyway, it's great to meet you, and thank you so much for watching my video.